I all right, it is Wednesday, November 29th. It is 12:01, and I will call this meeting of the C4 Toll Strategy Subcommittee into order. So, yeah, I hope everyone had a good holiday. It's nice to see everyone. There has been a lot that has happened since we have last met. And thank you to all of you for being here with the rescheduling that occurred, because there have been a lot of things that have happened. And even though we do not have that meeting, that hearing on Saturday that we thought we were going to have, it's still good for us to be here together and regroup. So the first thing that we have on our agenda today is the JPAC debrief and updates. And I believe we have some of those members here if you would like to make some comments. Do we have anyone from JPAC here? Oh, we don't. Okay.
Fortunately, and I actually just got word that Commissioner Savas will be jumping on here shortly, so we could potentially table the JPAC update until he joins, if you'd like.
Okay, let's do that, and then move on to Jamie with our tax stuff.
One question, Commissioner Marl.
Yes.
So you had mentioned that we don't have that meeting, the testimony on Saturday. Are they still not holding a meeting Saturday evening or afternoon at PCC?
They're still doing that. The East Portland. Of course, it's our community that's stuck in limbo as we wait to hear when that is. I don't know if staff has any other updates on that, but that's the knowledge that I have thus far.
And I just didn't know if there was any value of us showing up at that meeting as well and providing testimony. And what I'm always curious about, and again, I don't know if this is the right venue for this discussion, but as I went out to the Oregon website, the ODOT portion of the website, the searching on tolling subcommittee, searching on all these different things, finding any dates for those types of meetings, finding any information about that was impossible. And so how would any member of the public ever know that this was happening, or ever know that they should be providing valuable testimony about what's being crafted as kind of the future of transportation in Oregon, without it being, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but without it being a really select group of people that are notified by the presenters that this is going to happen, and the other 390,000 people in the metro area have no idea this is occurring. So am I missing something? Is there a spot on the website that there's like front and center, here's what's happening? And I'm just, I'm not a tech savvy person, but I'm a tech adjacent person. So I think I could find that stuff. Anyway, thank you. Of course, Ms. Stasny, you've got the information right at hand. So greatly appreciated. Sorry, please carry on.
Yeah, if I may, you may have already said it, apologize for being late, but if you'd already said it, I'm sorry. But one thing I didn't hear you say was that having the meeting set at such a late date with all the changes doesn't give us any runway to do on our part to give notification to a number of people that are going to catch it in time. So that really limits the opportunity. It just doesn't seem like it was very thoughtful in that regard, but it is what it is, unfortunately. So what do we do to broadcast it, essentially?
And we do have some time on our agenda because we did want to spend most of our meeting time today talking about our strategy for that. And we're also reviewing some talking points that we compiled. So we can take it up now, or maybe go through a few updates and then dedicate the remaining meeting for more of that strategy conversation. How's that sound?
Yeah, so let's push that toward the end once we've had more of a primer on what's been going on here. And so since Commissioner Savas is here, let's just do the JPAC update. Thank you, Jamie. But Commissioner Savas, we have a JPAC debrief and updates here first on our agenda. If you have an update you'd like to provide for us.
I'll be brief because as it relates to what we're talking about today, I'm not sure that it's going to bring a whole lot of value. But I believe Councilor Sherman was watching, if I'm not mistaken, and so I won't say participated, but he obviously participated in the impact. So essentially, the Mayor Buck's amendment was not approved. And the motion was made and the whole arrangement was made by ODOT, which is, self-serving, but it is what it is. ODOT made the motion to basically allow them to do what they needed to do, and which was dismiss the Buck amendment. Mayor Buck did a great job of presenting. I think a number of us made some of us made some comments, public comments. The issue I know that from some who submitted public testimony were somewhat, their testimony, unless it was live and at the moment was not heard. If it was submitted in written form, that was not circulated until 40 minutes after the meeting started, and only if you were to notice that it was in your inbox. So Mayor Rory's testimony was available 40 minutes after the meeting started if you were to open up your inbox, as was Mayor McGriff's. So that said, I don't know who would have made the difference, but so that's where that's at. The other one that relates to transportation in general amendment, a friendly amendment I asked to make was to include some language that essentially would give direction, especially where there were transportation system gaps, that there would be some prioritization for projects in underserved areas. Essentially, that would lead to a regionally balanced transportation system. I have tried to introduce language that essentially strives for a balanced transportation system, but it was denied and has been denied before. But I think what's most fascinating, and maybe that's something that we do, another exercise we do afterwards, but if you listen to the comments from some of the members of JPAC that did not want it or approve it, if you listen to that conversation, I think it might reveal the fact that, or the likelihood that my experience in the last 25 years, we don't get very much. I think that it looks as though that's going to continue unless we do something dramatically different. The paradigm is going to continue. We're going to be disadvantaged. And regardless who drives through any road or network system throughout Clackamas County, despite their backgrounds, despite their incomes, despite all those things, there's no consideration for making people traveling through or into Clackamas County for employment. Is there any accommodation to provide, reasonable, practical transit, and any equivalent or close to equivalent form that there is available in the city of Portland or Multnomah County? I'll just close it out there unless there's any questions. Very frustrating.
Are there any questions, Councilor Sherman?
Just one additional comment as well. I thought Commissioner Savas, you're spot on with the observations, and the other that I thought was interesting, and it's unfortunate that we try to kind of move the needle on revenue sharing and on just solidifying a date certain for revenue sharing so that they are and again that one gets pushed off and is not a topic of conversation going forward as well. So I think those issues are becoming more and more clear that Commissioner Savas, you're right, we're at a strategic disadvantage, and the ball isn't moving forward for us at this point. So what happens going forward, that's still kind of to be determined at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your overview, Commissioner Savas, and for all of your leadership on this work. I also want to acknowledge Councilor Sherman, Mayor Buck, all of the leadership that went in at the impact table and the other regional conversations around this effort. Just stepping back a little bit for context for those who may not have been tuned into all of the conversation there. This is regarding the Regional Transportation Plan approval. The Regional Transportation Plan is a coordinating document required by the federal government that allows our region to receive federal money. So it's a big, huge package of information that's been underway, under development for over 2 years, as Commissioner Savas said. So just want to add that context for everyone. That was approved by JPAC. There were some of the details there of some of the final conversations was approved. I believe it went to the Metro Council for approval last week and is moving forward to adoption. We were really close to missing the federal deadline for getting that updated. I believe it was December 6th. If we would have been out of compliance, we would not have been eligible to receive federal money. So I wanted to add that larger context to the conversation. just so everyone that's here today, as well as anyone that might be tuning in the future, can understand that the context for this JPAC update. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Commissioner Savas and Councilor Sherman, and thank you, Jamie, as well. And we will move on to the RTAC update. Jamie, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all. Please excuse my voice. I am getting over being sick, so I hope you all had a great holiday and didn't spend yours with sick people like I did. 2 thumbs up. We're all getting better now. So I'm here to provide you an update on RTAC, and I'm going to do just a quick overview and turn it over to the folks who are actually at the meeting and around the table to share their experience. But in the packet for today's meeting, you have the RTAC packet. The meeting was held this past Monday. It's a 2.5 hour long meeting. They're held in person. And this meeting was delayed for 2 weeks. It was originally supposed to happen earlier in the month. So this meeting focused on the Abernathy Bridge scenario trade-offs, which we can talk about a little bit, updates on the implementation plans, which the governor has asked for, which are due by December 15th, as well as public comment, and then some updates on the toll program itself and the development of it. So that was the outline for the agenda itself. I'll share just from my perspective, watching the conversation. There's a lot of undercurrent during the meeting, a lot of acknowledgement happening from the director of ODOT about the tension that we've been feeling around mitigation, diversion, and nexus list projects. So an acknowledgement around kind of the tension that exists around that, which really all goes back to revenue sharing. And I think Councilor Sherman was talking about that a little bit. We know there's going to be a great deal of revenue generated. How is it going to be spent? And can we all get to a place where we agree on that? And can we develop a program that actually helps add benefits for the community, for the region, but also doesn't harm our communities? And what would need to happen for that to work? And how would revenue be allocated to help deal with those impacts? So I think that was one of my biggest observations, was that intro statement, and this meeting is recorded and available online from Director Strickler, was the first time I've really heard a public acknowledgement of that tension. And also mentioned in that intro was their intention, ODOT's intention, to have a conversation with the OTC in January, beginning discussions of how revenue can be spent from tolling and how it will be designated. So how it will be allocated. So those conversations are going to start with OTC in January, and RTAC is expected to be participating in that conversation. I'll say in the background, there had been a formal request for ODOT to bring forward an ask to the OTC to initiate the development of a revenue sharing agreement with RTAC. That request came from Councilor Lewis from Metro. She asked for it to be added to the agenda. This was their response to that request. So we're not sure exactly what that looks like yet, but just wanted to share that was daylighted and acknowledged more than it ever has been in the past. So I think that is positive. There was a lot of good conversation, the Abernathy Bridge toll scenario trade-offs, a lot of questions, and I'll share from staff perspective. We just saw this information maybe 2 weeks before this meeting happened. We were quite surprised to see them talking about the financials of the 205 project when we haven't seen any updated technical analysis since the original EA was tabled and they announced they were doing a supplemental EA. We haven't had no technical meetings, we've seen no information, and then we see this. So we are still processing that. We actually have a technical meeting on the books next week with their team, which we have worked really hard to get for an hour to try and unpack and understand what these scenarios are. So we can talk in more detail about those if you would like. I'll share just one more thing and then turn it over. Implementation plans, as I mentioned, the governor, when she did the pause, she asked for a revenue plan back this summer, which has already been submitted, and then implementation plans on diversion and equity by December 15th. ODOT has been in development of those. They have been working with RTAC staff, which are the staff people for all the folks around the RTAC table, although it has been really tense there as well. We have asked multiple occasions, all the regional partners, can we see the draft plans? Can we give you comments on those? They have given us I would say, crumbs or framework with a lot of missing information that's very difficult to comment on. We have a lot of questions. I shared that with our tech members before the meeting, sort of what our conversation has been. We would like to see the draft plans, give comments, and have those reflected prior to this going to the OTC. I do not think we have certainty or any assurance that that will happen. So sharing that. Also, I'll note on those implementation plans, which Brendan Fenn joke looked like a diagram from Chutes and Ladders, big arrow with a bunch of dates on it. There was a whole bunch more information added, which was posted online the day of the meeting that our tax staff hadn't seen. So I'm still reviewing those. We're all still reviewing those to try and understand what they mean and think about what's missing and what we'd like to see added. We have a lot of questions. So I know that's messy, but that's where we're at as a staff. And I want to leave space for Mayor Bialystowski and Commissioner Savas to share their perspectives since they were the ones at the table. So I'm happy to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor or Commissioner, if you have any comments.
Yeah, Mayor Rory, why don't you jump in first?
Hey, sure. I find myself getting more and more frustrated sitting through these RTAC meetings. It was the 11th meeting of RTAC, and through the 11 meetings, we've really given one recommendation several months ago on integrating the RMPP with 205, which the recommendation document says the members did not disagree with the following, which doesn't mean we agreed. And so this meeting was another one of those kind of frustrating things. They talked about Abernathy Bridge, and Mayor Lube was there from Tigard, which was great. And she kicked off questioning saying, what's the administrative overhead, or what's the gross revenue? Because ODOT was presenting in terms of net. They had a document that said net revenue 30 to 50 million a year. And when she asked about the gross, they attempted to explain what the money would be going to, credit card fees, operations and maintenance, but then declined to state the specific number. So then I got in there and asked, I'm going to take you to the slide where you cite the net revenue for fiscal year 2030. What's the gross? You obviously had to have a gross to come up with a net revenue. They said, we don't have that information. We're not gonna. So there seems to be a great hesitancy to reveal the actual percentage or the amount of money going to administrative overhead, which is in prior reports been estimated at around 40%, 30 to 40% in that 205 toll traffic and revenue report for the first year. And then we asked, let's see, they could not provide diversion counts either. So they had this document that said, Commissioner Savas knows this, but said most, least, and medium diversion. When asked what that meant, they couldn't provide the numbers. So there's no foundation for what that meant for the different scenarios to understand diversion counts. Yeah, there it is. And then last thing I'll add is there seemed to be some tension around the fact that the implementation plan was complete. They actually even gave a page number and described what it looked like, but then declined to provide it to RTAC to review. They just provided an outline. And Jamie, I don't know if you can remember, but Councilor Lewis asked a question like, when is the appropriate time for us to provide actual regional partners to provide input? Because the concern is they're going to say they presented it and sought feedback, but really the intent was not to ever seek feedback, just to present and ask if anybody had any questions. I don't remember what their answer was, but maybe you do.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That was exactly her question, Councilor Lewis. She asked when RTAC was supposed to give feedback on this, and they had it on the agenda as, I believe, information only. I think their response was, oh, anytime's great. You can give us feedback, but there's no formal opportunity for RTAC to give feedback on this. By the time you all meet again, this will be submitted. So any feedback will need to come through email, or, individually motivated feedback. There's no comment period. There's no guarantee that feedback will be taken. And as I said, there's no commitment to staff to have an opportunity to review and give feedback.
Yeah, so I'll jump in on portion of the meeting. Bear did a great job outlining some of the topics that were discussed. And I'm hoping that later we can talk about some of the opportunities for that comment, that Councilor Lewis was referring to. So let's work on that towards the end of the agenda. But I do want to, if you can put that slide back up, Jamie, page 5 of today's packet. I want to just tell you all what the point I try to make again, and some new information I've got as of yesterday. So I think you'll find this useful. So if you look at that, thank you, Jamie. If you look at that, the row that says no build, the second one down, no build, and next column it says NA. You go all the way where it says limited diversion. You can see what Mayor Rory was talking about there when their description is a very vague description with no basis, no foundation, no premise, right? Most, medium, limited, least, whatever. And when I spoke at the OTC here earlier this month, I made the comment essentially that, ODOT has not taken responsibility or acknowledgement of the existing diversion we have today. And this blank square is a demonstration of just that. The no build, the today, is apparently there's no diversion. Well, Mayor Rory and I and some others, our staff have talked, and I got some numbers, and apparently the number that I kind of threw out there at the meeting was pretty accurate, actually an underestimate. It's not 50,000 cars per day that are leaving the highway because of congestion. It's about closer to 80,000 today, rush hour traffic, morning to night on a business day. So I really made that case that these vague descriptions are misleading, and any reader would look at this and say, "Oh yeah, that tolling. Oh geez, well look, that one's better than this one." So it's so primitive when you look at the other columns that have far more detail. So if you look at the column to the left where it says speeds, right, congestion management benefits, that column, hours of delay, mile per hour, that's got definition. You look at the column to the left of that, it's got a dollar description. So then you look at the far column to the right, it's got the millions of dollars, but diversion, oh, it's just vaguely described. So sorry for going off, but I asked to have the actual traffic counts put in there. And maybe they can have some description of what, if they're more or less or whatnot. That's great. But I think the actual physical counts, they've got the data. If I found it, they can find it. But there is we got to make this case. We got to continue to beat this drum that the existing diversion today is not being addressed. And by the way, these numbers are on top of that. Okay, so most diversion, let's just, actually take the least diversion under the scenario of $2.25 in the data you'll find in their studies. That's approximately 50,000 more. That's 50,000 cars are estimated to leave the freeway diversion on top of the existing. So just add 50 and 50 or 50 plus 80. And not that it would be that way. There might be some duplicative people leaving, but you could easily see that it's going to be more than the 50,000 or the 80,000 of existing. So that's my point. I make my point. I'm continue to make that point to everyone, the state legislators, that and that is something that's not being acknowledged, and that equates to us as jurisdictions not getting the money for the proper mitigation to deal with their failing facility, I-205 today, not dealing with the safety issues that we currently have today, not dealing with the climate, not a benefit, but the climate impacts of continuing to do the same thing, expecting a different result. No monies towards transit or alternatives, which also came up. This is the issue for us, and frankly, all in an effort to get the third lane back in there, in the project or a future project, not canceled for indefinite period of time. So that's what I have. Sorry for the passion in the comments, but I think Mayor Rory covered all the other things as Jamie did as well. I'm happy to take any questions. Councilor Gardner.
Well, thank you. I don't really specifically have a question, but I have a general comment that that I've been set, this is a feeling I've had since we first started, ODOT first came to the city of Westland to talk about the tolling program. And questions were asked and they either weren't ready to answer, which is, I have now come to find and feel strongly that they should have anticipated the questions that we were asking. I was asking things like, that we're still talking about today. Could we move the placement of the gantries will have significant impacts. Can we move the gantry placement? Can we anticipate what the mitigation necessary will be? Well, the question I asked ODOT originally when Lucinda Broussard came to our meeting, the only time, she just said there will be no help for mitigation as far as funds to cities for mitigation of diversion. But what I wanted to say is that we need to start demanding answers. We need to not allow for this lack of transparency and this, well, we'll get that later. We don't have that answer today somehow. And I don't know that actually the answer to how to do that, but that's our responsibility. I see that. I see us participating. I mean, we're all very frustrated, and I'm not blaming anyone. This is not a criticism of anyone here, but we're being walked through, led through a process that we're then being portrayed as participatory in, that is not in any way in the best interest of our communities, and nor is it transparent or accessible. The document volumes, the data volume, the way it's presented, the degree of technical difficulty to understand these things, we have to demand better access. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you for all of your comments that you've made.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. I just want to, you know, in part response to your question and how we do it, I really think it's incumbent upon our state legislators who really, that's who ODOT works for. It's a state agency, they're state legislators, whether they're senators or state reps, they're the ones that can really demand the answers to those questions. And I think that whether it's the subcommittee meetings we have, or it's our relationships we have with our own legislators, but we got to give them a list of the questions we're not getting clear answers on. Thank you. Councilor Pratt.
When I read through this, I was just struck by, after that nice, well, the chart you showed, the very next page has key takeaways. And the last point is that with just one toll point at Abernathy Bridge, without RMPP or the extra lane, toll rates will have to be set, I'm reading it, at much higher levels to achieve significant long-term congestion relief. And then they say high toll rates will lead to higher levels of diversion. And so it's like the whole point of that chart is moot to me if that's how we're proceeding. So, you know, it's really, I agree with Councilor Baumgartner. I wish maybe there should be consideration here of if we could work as a group to, you know, contact our state legislatures or whatever we need to do, because this has gone on. I mean, I've been involved with this for over 2 years, and it's always these no answers about, you know, what the admin fees, about everything. And then like, you know, they're promoting this whole, how they're going to help lower income people. And then we're finding out that that's going to be probably less than 5% of those people will take advantage of that program. So it's just so frustrating. Doesn't seem like it's in the best interest of our communities.
One other thing that, thank you, Councilor Pratt. One other thing that you mentioned, and I was thinking that we did a lot of work, and I appreciate, you know, Jamie and others that helped put together our pre-meeting that we had last week. But the packet was changed. You know, we walk into a meeting, you know, we spent all our time preparing for that. And, you know, I got that slide. You saw that slide, right? That slide was not even shown during the meeting. And I even mentioned that. I go, by the way, I'm holding up the packet. This is today's packet. This is the packet you distributed. And yet now we have another packet with more information. They had a similar slide. That was slide 14, I believe, but they had a similar slide. But the point I made was it was still relevant. But it's just unacceptable to have a change, and a number of tactics. How genuine is it, to your point, Counselor, that you know, the previous page is essentially moot based on, you know, the strategy or the words that they're using on the following page. We're just trying to make some reasonable assessments of this, and then assuming there's a logical course of action and thought process, it'll get us to a point. But it seems more that we're just part of a run of a show. So, Adam, I'll turn it back to you. I see Jamie's hand up.
Amy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to those two comments. Thank you, Councillor Baumgartner and Councillor Pratt. I think your intuition on this, your feeling that you've been feeling since the beginning of this, is the same feeling that we have as staff. And it's really an out of control, frustrating feeling. It's really hard to come to the table to be a partner when you're constantly in reactive mode. And whether that's a tactic or an unintended consequence, that is the position that we do continue to find ourselves in. I put a link in the chat to the PowerPoint presentation, which did contain the bulk of the information that was shared at RTAC, which was not included in the packet. It was posted after the meeting. I see we have Adela Mu on the call. She works with ODOT. I don't know if she's able to speak to this, but would be really helpful if we could see those presentations posted at the same time that the packets are posted. So Adela, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you're here and you can hear me. If you can pass that message on to your team, that would be very much appreciated. I think that would be appropriate to give people the right amount of time to review the information and be able to come prepared to the meetings to have a conversation. So just putting that out there and acknowledging those comments. I also wanted to say, I think Commissioner Savitz nailed it with who has the power in this conversation to help us be able to get more transparency and a more collaborative process. That is the legislature. That is the special subcommittee on transportation planning that we're going to be talking about. That is their role. That is why they were created, was to add transparency and to dig into these issues. So the people that sit at that table and the people that influence those people are the ones that have the power to force more accountability and more participatory decision-making on from ODOT. So I just want to reiterate that. We're going to talk more about that, but I think the meetings that are coming up this weekend are a great chance to show up and say that. So I just want to say that. I also want to acknowledge something Councillor Sherman said, which is there is a meeting this Saturday, and that meeting's at 4 o'clock, and it's about I-205 East, and that includes Happy Valley, and that includes other places beyond just East Portland. So I encourage you all to show up at that 4 o'clock meeting this Saturday and to say, to get your perspective on the record. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we'll come back and talk about that more, but I just want to flag that. That is a meeting for you all, and I hope you will show up and testify.
Thank you, Jamie. And I'll just echo what's already been said, is that our only recourse right now is this legislative subcommittee. That's why we have to be very sharp and tactical with the way that we communicate. We need to be unified in our communications, and we do have that here on the agenda at the very end. And so before we get there, I just, and by the way, thank you, Adela, for that comment in the chat. We appreciate it. Do we have Mike Besner here to talk about the supplemental EA that we are all very interested in hearing about?
He's actually not able to join today, but I think Jamie can share a couple of updates. I know you already sort of touched on the supplemental EA, so is there anything beyond what you've already mentioned?
Yeah, so we did get an update during the RTAC meeting on the supplemental EA. I think most folks in this room know that ODOT initiated an EA on the I-205 toll program. They put out a draft EA that was for the 7-mile section. It didn't include assumptions that the third lane would be built as part of that project. After the pause, when ODOT came back to submit their revenue plan that was required by the governor, they essentially said that they can't pay for that. So the third lane. So they scaled the project down to just be a point toll on the Abernathy Bridge. That will warrant a supplemental EA, which is the term, the NEPA term for that document, which we understand is under development right now. One other update on that, they did issue a comment response to the initial EA. That is a high-level summary of responses to themes of comments that were submitted, and I can put a link to that in the chat. It is available. They also do a summary of their participation, community engagement overall, so you can take a look at that as well. That is something new that's happened within the last 2 weeks. So I can put that in the chat. Our understanding is there will be a meeting. I think it's December 14th or somewhere around that week. Will be a couple-hour meeting for participating agencies to come and hear about the updates to the supplemental EA. What is the process? What is the timeline? What are the decision points? When are we going to have more information? What will the technical process look like? Those are the type of questions I'm hoping will be answered at that meeting, but we'll have much more information after that meeting on the 14th. So just a couple quick updates. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the bulk of the time that we have set for this meeting is to discuss these special subcommittee on transportation planning meetings that they will be having a roadshow around the metro region. So first of all, so we do not have the Saturday meeting. We still have the Metro East one that's happening, and so we're all encouraged to attend that. But Jamie or staff, do we know about when we will hear about our regions, the formerly the Lake Oswego the Gladstone Westland Oregon City one? Do we know anything about when that will be coming out?
Jamie, I don't know if you have any intel. Trent is he has a good ear on the ground. Unfortunately, he's out on vacation this week, so I don't have any new details. Jamie, have you heard of anything?
Yes, what we're hearing is that they are having difficulty finding a location, and that is large enough and has the technical capacity to be able to serve as suitable. I know that Mayor Rory may have some updates on this, as I have heard that staff has reached out to him to try and coordinate on locations, but they have not scheduled it because they don't have a location. It's the latest that I've heard. Mayor, do you have any updates?
I heard from legislative staff. Actually, I sent an email first to say, to the co-chair saying, how can I help? We're very eager to provide our perspective. I know I have some points to make. Everybody does. How can, what's the status of the meeting? They said they don't have a location. So I then sent an email to the principal of Athey Creek Middle School, a new middle school that was built, which has a really large kind of gathering community space, and the high school principal, Trevor Mena at Westland High School, because we could use a gym, one of the two gyms they have, or the cafeteria area easily could accommodate tables, chairs, etc. I haven't heard back though on those points, whether those will work. But it's really hard because we don't have a date. So if I'm asking these people, can we use your space, but I don't have a date yet, how can we possibly plan like the space could be in use? So I'm waiting to hear back on an actual date to be able to make more of a formal request. This was just like an initial inquiry. Would it be feasible to use your space once we have a date? But people might not even be able to comment on it until they know what the date and time is. Because if it's during a school day, absolutely not. So it has to be weekend or after school to even have a shot.
I'll add just one more thing, which is I met with many of the chambers and business organizations yesterday, had a wonderful opportunity to meet with them all and talk with them about these upcoming meetings and opportunities to testify. I had a couple folks offer to help with location, so I am going to be following up with them today. They had a couple ideas in Oregon City, I think that may work. So I'll be following up and continuing to work to try and find a location as well. So thank you.
Excellent.
So there's a comment in the chat too.
What was that?
Oh, there's a comment in the chat. Sorry, I think it's a direct message. It says Regal Hilltop by the county campus allows people to rent auditoriums. Just FYI. Appreciate that comment. Just wanted to say one of the big challenges with finding a location is there is $0 of budget associated with these rentals. So I had heard that Clackamas Community College was willing to offer an opportunity, but it was like $100 cleaning fee or janitorial fee, and they were unable to secure that location because they do not have dollars to put toward securing a location.
I think we can come up with $100 to secure the location. But that just shows you that's unbelievable.
Yeah, sorry. I'll add just one more thing, which is that is why it is so important to show up this Saturday, because we don't know if a meeting will happen. So I think the East 205 meeting is your meeting too. Thank you, Brett. It's your meeting too. So show up there, and then we know the Wilsonville meeting is scheduled to be at City Council chambers on December 14th. That's your meeting too. So don't miss the opportunity to get your perspective on the table. I do not think it's inappropriate for you to show up at the ones that are already scheduled, and then show up again when the Oregon City Westland meeting is scheduled.
And then another logistical question. So I know that we have received emails about the invited guest speakers, and then there will be a separate section for general public. I'm curious if we know at all who that would be and when we would be able to, well, obviously, I guess since we don't have a date, that won't be happening. But if we know how they're going to be deciding that, if it's just going to be mayors, and what we're seeing for these other ones that are still happening.
Thank you for that question. So I just put the agenda this on the website. The link that I posted there, it's kind of hard to find. It's up in the corner. If you look at these are the meeting options on the link I just sent you. Up in the corner is something that says open PDF agenda. If you do that, that actually shows the location of the meeting. So that's really helpful because none of the other information shows where the meetings are set to occur. So that's the location of the meeting, the time. So this is the one that's Saturday at 4 p.m. And it says invited speakers only, presenters TBD. This meeting is in 3 days. So I do not know that the speakers will be revealed ahead of the meeting. Maybe they will be for the Wilsonville meeting since there's a bit more time, but we haven't inquired about that and have not heard back. So I just wanted to share that with you all. And then one other comment on that piece, I have heard from Mayor Bubenik from Tualatin. He was invited to speak at the Wilsonville meeting. They're providing the invited speakers 3 minutes to provide their testimony. So 3 minutes, and then the public get 2 minutes. So just noting that for you all as you're thinking forward and preparing for how you'll show up and speak, those are the time limits that they've offered. I think there's been some pushback from Mayor Bubenik, but so far I understand that they are holding firm to 3 minutes.
And that is exactly why, again, it is very nice that we have those joint tolling values from which we can glean a lot of our talking points already in a succinct way that will hopefully fit within. I know we've got a lot of other stories we'd like to tell, but the more that we all hit it home, the more that they will hopefully get the message specifically about the diversion. And yes, I see that comment from Councillor Sherman about not being able to register in advance. Councillor Pratt.
My plan, because we have 3 minutes for the mayor to speak for our entire city, is to try to sign up as a member of the public to help, because I think we all have a right to speak as members of the public. But it's really tough, 3 minutes to try to get all our points in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a series of testimony is completely acceptable if those are the time limits. I mean, I don't know how many invited speakers there will be, but that would be a lot of 3 minute speakers, right? To fill up an entire hour. So I'm not sure what the presentation looks like, but I think that's completely appropriate for you to show up. They are also accepting testimony, written testimony, and there's an email address to send it to on that link that I put in the chat. And then thank you for referring back, Commissioner Marl, to the values and outcomes statement. I can paste a link to that in the chat. I think that is a really good foundation for bringing comments forward. And then I also wanted to point your attention to page 53 of the packet. And Brian, I don't want to steal your thunder. If you want to do this part, I can let you speak. Do you want to go through the talking points, or shall I? Oh, perfect.
Sorry, I was trying to share and get off of mute. I have this document pulled up right here. And I also just I think Jamie already sent this link to that OLIS website that has all of the special committees schedule. You can actually sign up for updates also, because, you know, I think the comment was made earlier, and I absolutely agree. They're not doing a great job of giving notification of the schedule changes. But what we have here included in the packet for you, and what I'm sharing right now, is a list of 5 different issues, and we've compiled some top themes and then a series of main requests. And this is all really intended to be sort of a resource for you all. Trent and myself, we pulled this together from the value statement as well as many of the other comments and testimony we've already prepared. So none of this information should seem that new to you all, but hopefully this will help sort of guide your comments and your testimony. The 5 issues that we outline are safety, diversion, funding, partnerships, and alternative modes. And you all are welcome to, this is not necessarily a script per se, but hopefully some sort of draft talking points for you all. Otherwise, I'm happy to turn it back over to members to review and discuss any of the specific points. Or Jamie, do you have any other comments on this document we have?
No, you did a great job, Brian. I think we just tried to pull from the values and outcomes and flesh out a little bit more of what those comments to support those points would look like. So it is just a foundational document for you to be able to refer to. Use it if it's helpful to you. Don't if it's not. We just wanted to give you guys a little more information to make planning your testimony a little bit easier. So it's just, as Brian said, a template, not even a template, a draft, some framework for you to be able to refer to if it's helpful or be inspired by. So thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
I just want to read from you from the invite that Mayor Bubenik got. It says the focus of this public meeting is on specific issues, which include impact on local residents with limited alternative routes, public transportation, and proximity to retirement communities. So that's what they're saying they want to hear about.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, I would add to that, whether they want to hear it or not, the proximity of schools. If you just look at Borland Road, there's 4 schools on Borland Road in a very short distance. And we were given a tour last week. Mr. Besner and staff were given a tour, and these little children, darling little children on their little bikes, riding down at the end of the sidewalk, heading eastbound or westbound towards Tualatin from, they were in West Lynn at the time, but that sidewalk was, they were at the end of the sidewalk and they were about to just trek on a very narrow section of road. It was dangerous as hell. That's not, so I plan on speaking to the fact that I kind of alluded to earlier, using that $50,000 or $80,000 diversion today, and that this tolling program is only going to make that worse. It does not meet the state's goals for safety, or ODOT's goals for safety, does not meet the goals for climate. And by the way, that last bullet that's in that in the packet there of the first page, Brian, that you put together there, that last bullet relates to local impacts. Portland is really using, the Portland groups are really leveraging that pretty much to say that, hey, all that vehicle exhaust is coming into our neighborhoods, right? So just think of 50,000 cars into our communities and all those tailpipe emissions. And this program will do nothing to make it better, only to make it worse. And by the way, the reason it is so bad today is because of the bottleneck that is not being fixed that was legislatively directed. That's going to be the thrust of my comments, wherever I can get them in from here on out.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Other comments? This is a very helpful document, so thank you, staff, for compiling this. There have been so many meetings that we've attended, and it's been difficult for us, I think, to remember all of these different things that we need to make sure are on our list, so this is very helpful. John?
Yes, my comment in addition, and I'm not going to get the public record until this Friday, but when they made the presentation in front of the legislature on November 6th, and I sent out to some people the presentation that was made, the real problem is Clark County. Clark County brings over 100,000 cars in the Portland area every day, and there's no talk about a toll on them. Because you put a toll on them, they'll either move back to Oregon or they'll help pay for what really needs to be done. And when they're showing, as an example, that all they're going to improve on I-205 is by 3 hours, only 3 hours a day is it congested. The areas up in on I-205 and I-5 going between Portland and Clark County is 12 hours. That's the only problem. The problem is there's a lot of voters up there, and they don't want to upset the voters. And when I spoke to, especially for the Oregon City, the state representative, they're aware of it. And that's the horrible thing about Abernathy, which was never in any report, is how many people are going to get off now, all the way back at Donald, to take 99E to avoid the toll. Canby and Oregon City are going to suffer. And ODOT doesn't care because, as I've said at many meetings, ODOT's problem is they can't forecast their revenue. In the last biennium, they were off by more than 700 million. In the current biennium, they're off by over 200 million. And they give excuses for it. And the real excuse is they don't know how to forecast. And if they go, well, if we don't get the money, we're not going to build. I always go, what's the next question? You know, if they have to stop building because they can't get the money, then stop building until they can bring in people. And Chris Strickler is not a financial person. He needs to be replaced. OTC has to do it. It needs to be done immediately.
Thank you, John. I do believe that tolls are a part of the conversation for the IBR, that IBR being the Interstate Bridge Replacement. And so I do believe that is still a part of the conversation, although it's separate from RMPP and from the 205 tolling plan. But thank you for those insights. Brian.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to encourage folks, and I'm sure Trent would appreciate this reminder. You know, although we're still waiting for our date, our meeting hearing date, I think we should, to the extent we can, think about testifying at every and all of these community meetings. And I'm happy to hear that this document that we prepared is helpful for you all, and maybe even using some of those themes and key requests to turn into written testimony could be another alternative. You can just submit those to every single community meeting.
Agreed. Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, to John's point about his earlier point in his conversation there about Vancouver residents that come in every day. You know, yeah, staff did a great job of kind of responding to that. I just want to add a few things here that you know, John, as a member of our community, he's engaged a lot of this stuff more so than the average person, right? And John's not aware of, this is no hit on John. John, this is a very friendly observation for a lot. The challenge here I'm trying to say is that not everyone sees all the pieces, right? You've got the Abernathy toll. You've got the RMPP that layers on top of that. But you got the IBR toll, right? And if you listen to the RTAC meeting, you'll hear discussion about the interstate agreements that have to be there for the tolling between those. So I foresee that the state of Washington, I thought I heard that. Mayor Rory, if you heard that as well at the tail end of the meeting, I thought I heard conversation that would lead one to believe that Clark County or Washington State might invoke some kind of a tolling program as well, or a congestion pricing program that's compatible with ours. So it's coming. But my point is that the public doesn't see all these pieces and layers of tolling, and they're just seeing 75 cents to $2.25 when they really don't see that it's, you know, from a trip to Vancouver and back, it could be $6, $7, $8 to get to Oregon City to Vancouver. One way.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Mayor Milch.
I've always considered these meetings with the ODOT people to be a case of the fox guarding the hen house. I'm surprised that they have such control over the revenue aspect of this, in addition to the actual projects. To her credit, Representative Hartman, I think, recently sent out a list of links to some of these meetings that were going on and the ones coming up. And one of them was the committee that Senator Mark Meek chairs about finance and revenue. And they had a recent meeting during that interim session where they looked at, you know, the fact that we have a 20-year history of testing a pilot program on vehicle miles traveled fees that people can opt into to provide the data that the state needs to know whether that would be an effective way of funding transportation. And there's also a procedure that the state has to go through every few years to determine whether the various fees that we charge for road use are in balance between large vehicles and small vehicles to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. So there's a lot of elements to transportation funding that are being looked at by a different committee, but we don't hear them talked about too much. I made the mistake at one meeting of calling this joint committee the Joint Committee on Transportation Funding, when it's actually the Joint Committee on Transportation Planning. But I would rather that there was a substantial amount of focus on funding options, so that rather than looking at, only that you're going to get the revenue by tolling, therefore we have to toll. If they knew that they could get the revenue through some alternative methods, then we'd probably get clearer answers on the infrastructure costs and the overhead costs of tolling. And that was the answer that Mayor Bielostowski wanted a while back in this conversation. What are all those gantries and all those transponders and all those data farms to keep the photographs of everybody's license plate who doesn't have a transponder in their car? What's that going to cost? So I hope that we will also be providing some input on more reasonable or broader options on funding for the transportation program. And that's not the focus of this joint subcommittee, but they need to hear that we want them to think about that too.
That's a great point, Mayor. I have that on my list as well, and I think it would do us all well to incorporate our willingness as local officials to be a part of the conversation about alternative funding models. Because if we just show up and complain about the cards we've been dealt, that's not going to change much unless we indicate that we're willing to talk about other ways, because we see on the ground every single day in the communities that we serve that we do have a shortage in funding for transportation system needs. And so this is something that we know we need to fill, but there are other ways that we can be looking at it. So I appreciate that comment, Mayor. Mayor Bielostowski.
Thank you. On that point, just wanted to provide a brief update on the survey/poll that we've talked about before. Looking like the city will be moving forward with a contract in the near future. We've been still working to gain some financial commitments, but things are looking good on that front to raise the amount of 30 to 33,000. So for some of you already here. So
Do you have that have committed?
What'd you say?
You have a list of cities that have committed?
Yes. Can provide. Did you want me to provide it here or just send it to you later?
I mean, if you just had it on and listed it, but either way.
I'll take a look and send it to you right after. I got to go back and look.
I appreciate it. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to build on the conversation with Mayor Milch, and that is that, point taken, don't disagree at all, but practically speaking, how do we do that in 2 or 3 minutes? If you're not an invited guest, you got 2 minutes, right? I mean, there's not really a genuine format and really to have that discussion. And if you recall, and I appreciate Representative Hartman's efforts. I really, really do. She's really trying hard. So I want to give her credit where credit's due. But as you all recall from the beginning, we anticipated and thought and heard there would be an opportunity for local electeds like us to be sitting at a table and having that conversation, not being up at a podium or a microphone for 2 or 3 minutes in a public setting where there's nothing really constructive about that. Constructive brainstorming happens with good minds around a table and an opportunity to discuss and talk to one another. We're not having that. That's not what's happening here. I think that, yeah, one of us or some of us should make some reference to the work that we're doing and that we're willing, and we recognize the needs. However, they're not giving us a format to really give that constructive dialogue or recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jamie.
Thank you. I just want to add a couple comments. This has been a great discussion. I think a lot of great points have been brought forward. I wanted to go back to the RTAC conversation and share a theme that I didn't mention when I gave my update, which was show your work. That was the theme. There was literally, 7, 8 people who said, ODOT, show your work. This was in regards to the I-205 funding scenarios piece. And I think Mayor Bialystock, you mentioned the Mayor of Tigard brought forward questions about gross versus net revenue. And I wanted to share that some quick back of the napkin math that our staff put together showed that what they're showing for net revenue is less than a third, maybe even closer to a fourth of what will be generated for gross revenue. So where is that money going? And that question was asked by the Mayor of Tigard. I think it's a great question and something for us to continue to reiterate. And I think transparency on that issue is critical. So as you're thinking about your testimony for Saturday or the 14th or whenever the Westland Oregon City meeting is, make sure and consider adding that to your comments, because I think hammering on that point is really important. I also want to acknowledge Commissioner Savis's comments about not looking at all of these things together and how the public may just be seeing 75 cents for a toll and like, oh, it's not that big a deal. I think that's something we're thinking critically about as staff. If you reviewed our letter on the EA, you noticed that we talked about something called segmentation, which is when an agency does a series of different NEPA approvals, but doesn't consider the whole cumulative package. I am very concerned that the approach that ODOT is taking right now to break all these things apart allows them to do that. Basically, hey, it's only 75 cents, but then you're not looking at the $2 that's layered on top of that or the larger cumulative picture. So I just want to give you that term, segmentation and cumulative impacts. I think those two terms are really important to keep in mind as well. And the last thing I want to say is we know that this 205 information is really confusing. We feel that way too. As I said, we have a technical meeting on it. That's why we're inviting ODOT staff to come to our December meeting of this group to provide you all with an opportunity to ask questions. So they're not getting direction from the OTC on that until January or maybe March. So we have a little bit of time. So I just wanted to plant that seed of it's a great opportunity for you guys to let that soak in, think about it. Let's talk about it. And let's really be ready to leverage the opportunity to have ODOT in a room with us next month and really get clear on what some of these things are. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baumgartner.
Thank you. I just had 2 quick things to say. One is an immediate response to what you were just saying, Jamie, and that is about, again, about access and preparation. So I think it's reasonable to have an expectation. We're professionals. To have an expectation of what our questions might be when we're presented with information at a meeting. So we have a packet, and I think I could probably go through, if I was a professional traffic planner and designer in this realm, I could anticipate the top 5 questions. So to be told, we don't know, we'll get back to you. For one thing, that removes the ability for anyone else in the meeting to hear the answer to that question. And just the other segmentations that causes are a problem. And the other thing I wanted to mention is what everybody's talking about funding. I think that's a really, really important point. That is this sustainable as a funding mechanism? Is this even an efficient and viable system? Are we going to be, or are we, as I think we're all kind of starting to really hear and understand, going to be overtaxing people with a cumbersomely administrative, heavy, burdensome system that to create a small portion of funding that costs exorbitant amounts of money. And then the other thing I want to say is I don't think should be our responsibility as electeds to come up with the answers, but I'm willing to have that conversation. I would start by immediately saying to ODOT, I want to hear from you. Give us 5 other funding scenarios. What would it cost? Vehicle miles traveled, what's that look like? I mean, they should be telling us, in other words, what the other options are. Thank you.
Jamie.
I just wanted to respond to that comment, Councilor Baumgartner. I think those are really good points. Adela is here listening for the ODOT team. They are going to be here with you next month talking about these 205 funding scenarios. I think if you have a request for that team to come with some information, Adela might be the right person to pass that request on to the team. So I think what I heard you say, Councilor, is you'd like to have them come forward and offer some other funding options for these projects beyond tolling. Not sure if this is the right venue for that, but Adela, can you indicate in the chat if you heard that request and if you can have ODOT's team respond to that? Thank you. And last thing I'll say is this broader funding conversation, which many of you all have brought up today, is going to be the focus of the short and long session. This is going to be a big discussion. And I think we shared with you last time, but I'll share it again. We have heard from the governor's staff that they are drafting a memo which will serve as the foundation for the conversation about developing a transportation funding package in the long session 25. And so that memo, which will lay out a path, a timeline, will be coming out in December. So we're going to have some more framework to be able to discuss in this meeting or at C4 at the larger table, wherever it's appropriate. But I just wanted to flag that for you all. That has just been verbalized to us. Haven't seen anything, but we have been told it will be out in the first 2 weeks of December. So we'll keep you all posted and make sure we're sharing that as soon as we have it.
Excellent. Mayor Milch.
Just wanted to add one more thing that somebody, I think in the public comment that somebody made that was published in today's agenda, somebody suggested a tire tax as another way that might be a little less overhead, similar to the gas tax that you just, you buy a set of tires and you don't even know it. Part of your money is going to for transportation costs. I like that there are those ideas out there, and I want more discussion of options, as Councilor Baumgartner said.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just on this whole thing, it'd be remiss not to remind everyone, for those who heard it once at least, or for those who had not heard it at all, that two efforts or two opportunities that you all have to advocate for more discussion on funding or be part of those funding discussions. There's been a process initiated with the AOC, Association of Oregon Counties, and the LOC. I assume a lot of you are members of the LOC. And I don't know when the next meeting is, probably going to be early next year. But there have been 2 meetings thus far. I would encourage you to get as involved with that as you can. And as people who are close to this issue, I think you can probably bring some insights to your other colleagues around the state that are not aware of what's going on and or not aware of how we're being treated. I think that's another thing that came up at the AOC conference here a couple of weeks ago. I heard from a number of members of county commissions that are also members of the Region 1 ACTs that have also been clamoring for some kind of discussion. So that's one opportunity. The other one is I've been trying, as the vice chair of the Region 1 ACT, to get that conversation starting there. I'm trying to move and push the agenda closer. It's not easy towards a conversation like that and a work plan that reflects that. So Brett, you're on the R1 Act, right? So that meeting's next Monday. I finally got a carve out for some discussion to talk about the work plan, only to insert opportunities. So if you could I really appreciate anyone else around the table at the R1 Act, but I plan on making a few phone calls to just remind people that the opportunity is now before us to actually talk about the work plan, which we can insert discussion about funding, so that number one, that all these ideas, whether it's tire tax or whether it's RUC or Orgo or something like that, all these ideas are factored in, and I think it bode well for us to be seen as being part of the solution, which I've tried to make that point for a very, very, very long time. But it sounds like sometimes our ideas don't matter, and the ideas that come from the state are, I don't know. It just seems that it's been a one-way street, and I think it ought to be a bi-directional conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Do we have any other comments to close out this discussion on the special subcommittee? We have a lot of things to think about, and we have some planning to do each as individual electeds, trying to make it out to as many of these regional meetings as we can, whether they're in our backyards or not. So strongly encourage us all to consider that, as well as talking to our colleagues on our councils and commissions to do that as well. Many of us have social medias and have followings there where we can encourage members of the public to be attending as well, because as was noted earlier, this is not something that I feel has been adequately televised or advertised to people in our communities, and that's the reason why we're having this. And so why would we have this if people don't know? So Jamie.
Thank you, Commissioner Marl. I just wanted to reiterate, you just said what I was going to say, but a little more detail. So the county is doing a big social media blast and encouraging call to action, encouraging people to show up at the 205 East meeting. I would encourage you all to talk with your teams at your jurisdictions. Feel free to steal our media blast. I think it was supposed to hit Facebook this morning, but I just tried to find it and couldn't see it. So if you have trouble locating that, or you want to just connect me with the person that's responsible for that, we're happy to coordinate. Don't need to create extra work, but we're doing a call to action. We're giving the actual addresses and times of the meetings in a very simple paragraph so that people know what it is, where they can go, and how to be prepared. So would encourage you all to steal that or do your own version, get the word out. Let's get some folks showing up, and we're doing the same path with the business community. So hopefully we'll get a lot of businesses and others sharing their perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, if there are no other comments, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.